if you run!
We are talking the Christmas horror comedy Werewolf Santa, and this is directed by Ariel Anthony Hales, and the only kind of recognisable name in regards to cast for me was Emily Booth, and it's actually a found footage horror comedy, yes, involving a werewolf Santa. So the story is we have this young girl called Lucy who is a kind of YouTuber, and she's doing various kind of cryptozoology style kind of monster hunts. And it happens on this particular kind of Christmas Eve that she manages to capture on film Santa Claus right before he is attacked by a werewolf. And then Santa Claus himself turns into a werewolf, going around the local kind of area of Hastings in the UK where this is located. And this werewolf Santa now eating the local populace. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let us discuss. So a little disclaimer, this is a very, very low budget British movie, and the budget really does affect this movie. It really does show. It's one of these films that I feel, you know, a budget was an issue. Let me just put it like that. What can we say that works in this movie's favour? I think it's an interesting kind of like setup for a film. It's a found footage movie. You don't get too many found footage Christmas movies. You don't get too many found footage kind of comedy movies. And this is kind of both. So it's an interesting kind of like concept for a film. I don't know if those things completely work as a kind of a... it's a kind of delivery mechanism. They don't really mesh, if that makes sense. But it's an interesting kind of idea here. What can I say in the positive kind of column? It's a fantastic idea for a horror movie. You know, Santa getting kind of bitten by a werewolf and then kind of running amok in his kind of Santa costume, killing the kind of the locals, all that sort of stuff. It's a great idea for a setup for a kind of a horror comedy, I have to say. There are some quite nice external sequences. You know, we've got full moon, we've got this kind of snowy kind of backdrop. And I have to say, the sequences where we see like this forestry area, actually, even for a found footage movie, there's a few shots here and there. I thought, wow, that looks pretty affecting. I have to say, it looks actually quite kind of good in regards to some of these kind of external areas. In regards to the kind of the comedy, there are some kind of funny one-liners. For example, we have this kind of group of protagonists led by Lucy, who is a YouTuber, and we've got, you know, her mum, played by Emily Booth, a couple of friends, etc. And they find various kind of mutilated bodies, you know, that have been kind of killed by this werewolf Santa. And one of them makes a comment, for example, that all the guts look like lasagna. Things like this. So I thought it was kind of quite, there was some quite, although it wasn't like laugh out loud funny, and the jokes, I think, you know, often missed, there were a kind of a few kind of good one-liners, I would say, that kind of brought a wide smile to my face. In regards to the VFX, we're going to come back to this, but I think some of the practical gore effects, although they didn't necessarily look realistic, there's plenty of sequences where we have intestines hanging out and things like that. So, you know, it's it looks okay for kind of a low-budget film in regards to some of the kind of the gore effects, at least, I would suggest. And it's a relatively kind of short film, so it doesn't outstay its welcome to a point. But therein lies, I think, let's talk about what doesn't work with this film. It is incredibly cheap. Let's go back to the VFX. I feel the werewolf Santa here is going to be particularly disappointing. This cover of the movie looks like a pretty interesting and kind of like cool looking kind of werewolf Santa. This is not what you get in this movie. You get a cheap looking Santa suit, looks like a kind of like one you'd buy in a kind of a joke shop, and literally a rubber werewolf mask, and that's what you get. It was not good, not a good Werewolf Santa, I would say. Now, because it is found footage, they try and kind of like, you know, it's only in passing and you kind of don't see loads of it. But when we do see it, it doesn't look particularly impressive. I have got to be honest with you. Plot-wise, it's a lot of kind of people arguing, a lot of kind of like either walking around or driving around with like the parents arguing. We've got a couple of kind of the Lucy's male friends kind of keep pestering her for sex. It's a lot, that's what most of the running time is. I think this movie would have benefited from being having a lot more focus on the kind of werewolf Santa, it being ideally a bigger budget so we can have a more interesting kind of looking werewolf Santa, and a bit more kind of like kind of bloodier and kind of violent perhaps. Story-wise, it's sparse, to be honest. I mean, like I've said, I spent a lot of time just kind of having these kind of arguing, and my God, am I over found footage movies with lots of kind of arguing. It's just been done to death. There is actually a relatively reasonable plot twist towards the end of the movie, I would say, but I don't know, if it gets kind of somewhat came out of nowhere, if I'm honest. But, you know, the plot itself is nothing to kind of write home about. And I had to talk a little bit about the kind of the acting and the kind of the tone of this film. So the acting, first of all, now it's trying to be a kind of horror comedy. So it's somewhat schlocky, trying to be a little bit campy. So the performances are a little bit over-exaggerated. And therefore, in a found footage kind of style film, they don't seem particularly strong. Let me put it like this. And maybe not everyone, I think there are a couple, like Emily Booth I think does the best she can. But some of the other performances just seem a little bit dumb, little bit kind of like silly. And I think it's partially because of we have this mix of a found footage movie, which is meant to be this kind of like, you know, with a found footage movie, the whole kind of concept is you are watching this kind of like unfold and as people witness it. So it has that edge of realism in it. That's the whole point of the found footage genre. Then you have this silly kind of campy kind of style, and it's never attempting to be like a genuine sort of like real movie, real kind of like serious film. But it really kind of, it's odds with one another, to be honest. So you have this like odds kind of style. And I think because of this jokey kind of atmosphere, had this been shot in a kind of a traditional style rather than found footage, it might have blended a little more. But here it doesn't really work. You know, so it has this kind of like silly kind of campiness. Now you could argue it kind of feels like a pantomime, which is a very festive thing here in the UK. I'm not sure if you have it outside of England and that, but you know, it kind of feels like a pantomime. The movie also has an excessively long intro because they have a voiceover by that Joe Bob Briggs geezer from Shudder. You know, oh, we paid for him to have this like few minutes intro. Didn't need it, and you know, just to put a name on the DVD box, I suppose. But that was like, when's the actual film going to start? So it's a fun idea. It has some amusing moments. The actual horror stuff of it is, you know, it's a fun concept, but it's so poorly executed. I think primarily because of the extraordinary low budget here, and it ends up just being a run-of-the-mill, low-budget found footage movie that has a weird, unrealistic tone. So it's a bit of a miss, to be honest. So for me, how to rate this one? It's going to be a 3 out of 10. I don't think it's a particularly strong film. I think there were missed opportunities with this one. It could have been, I think, more of an interesting film had it had some different choices made in it. And obviously, if it had a bigger budget. But the budget is what it is, but I think they could have made different choices with it to make it more of a fun viewing experience. As it stands at the moment, it's a little bit of a damp squib. 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? Please let me know if you have and what your thoughts were, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.